If you could be someone else and steal millions while doing it, would you? Frank Abagnale lived over 8 different lives, all before he was 22 years old. Join us now as we examine the all-too-real story behind Catch Me If You Can.
Are you ready to get all too real? This is All Too Real Podcast. This is All Too Real Podcast.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this episode of the All Too Real Podcast. Today we're talking about the 2002 film Catch Me If You Can. Whew. Okay, anyways. That was directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back and listen to this. Okay?
Watch it. It's good.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Michael E. Cullen II, of course, and with me, as always, is my co-host Matthew Haas.
Hi.
That was very, very, very enthusiastic.
Very enthusiastic. Hi.
Yeah, you're getting better at this.
Woo!
Now.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways. All right. So, tell me a little bit about the film, like the basis of the story and everything here, Matt.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's about Frank Abagnale Jr., who was your typical high school kid for the most part, but he's really interested in doing small type of con jobs. And his dad, Frank Abagnale Sr., was a local businessman in New York. He was also involved in local Republican politics. Quite wealthy, self-made man type guy. He underwent some financial issues with the IRS or whatever, and because of all the stress of his life going on, his parents got divorced and whatnot. He struck out on his own, but didn't really want to work a regular job, so he thought, hey, he'll just cut some bad checks and live like that. And it kind of, one thing led to another, and it just kind of spiraled into like a 5-year career of just being a fraudster.
Yeah, he posed as a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, different things, and all within like the span of 5 years.
Yeah, it was a really short time.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happened, and it's a true story. And then he went on to work for the FBI, and now he's like one of the major people who helps catch people like him. So it's awesome, at least, it shows you that things can turn around and everything. So why don't we get started with a couple of the things that you really liked about the film first, Matt. We'll start with the likes today.
Well, just overall, I like the overall mood of the film.
Yes.
It was very kind of lighthearted. It was funny. It wasn't too serious, even though it was about a very serious issue of, a child basically committing, very serious frauds, against the government. But just, I like that aspect. I like the music. It seems like movies have changed quite a bit in the last 16 years. You don't see too many movies that have that kind of feel or mood to it anymore. A lot of even funnier movies, they seem to not have that kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I've noticed that a lot of films, the camera's always kind of facing straight at people's faces, whereas older films, there's a lot of more side stuff going on. I don't know what you call that, but I don't see too many movies having that kind of side view anymore.
Like you said with the music too, it was John Williams who did the score, and it was and what I felt with that score too, it kind of was a throwback to Bernard Herrmann type music from from like Hitchcock type movies and stuff like that, which was kind of cool. And Bernard Herrmann kind of actually was the mentor to John Williams too, so you can hear a lot of that, and it fits the time period too, because Bernard Herrmann was huge in the 50s and 60s, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And just, that aspect to it, the scenes were really good. There's a lot of, give and take. Some of it might have not even been scripted. Some of it may have just been natural. Like there's a scene where Frank impersonates the pilot for the very first time. Well, he deadheads for the first time. Deadhead is where you fly on another airplane
at another airline.
Yeah,
so,
sorry, yeah. And that was because he wanted to travel somewhere. So he, well, in the film, no, he was trying to cash a check, and then the person at the front thought that he was her deadhead, so she kind of forced him on the plane. So he didn't really know. He didn't really actually intend on doing that, but he wanted to keep his, keep character, so he did. And then they take him to the cockpit, and the pilots are asking him all these, pilot questions, and he's just kind of just answering on the fly, just making stuff up. And they're like, "Yeah, we've all had to do that and stuff." And then the stewardess, she asks him if he would like something to drink, and he just kind of goes like, "Milk," and this like almost childlike thing. And he's physically sitting down too, so it's like she's taller than him at that point, and it just had like this almost like motherly, like someone's towering over him asking him if he wants the drink, and he asks for milk.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, that kind of like was very interesting to me.
So, were those the two things you really liked, or do you got more?
I mean, I got lots of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
those are just two I came up with. I mean, like there's the scene in the beginning of the movie where Frank Abagnale Sr. is giving a speech to the Rotary Club ceremony.
Yeah.
And he talks about how there was a story of two mice that fell into a bucket of cream, and the first mouse gave up and drowned, but the second mouse kept swimming and turned the cream into butter. And then how he said he was the second mouse. Yeah, he climbed out. And how he said he was the second mouse because that's when the IRS was starting to, kind of come down hard on him.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I go, like you said already, I mean, I love the music in the film. It's great. I think that it's really kind of cool too to see like some of these, especially actresses before they were big, like Jennifer Garner's in there in one scene, and Elizabeth Banks is in another scene, and now they've both gone on to be kind of huge stars. But this was kind of before they really were anybody big, which is kind of cool because I think this was before Alias for her, and and before Elizabeth Banks hit it with some of her movies that she's done. The other thing I really liked, I mean, the performances were really great. I'm not always the biggest Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I do like him in biopics a lot, though, because I mean, I like this, and I like Wolf of Wall Street, and I like The Aviator, and some other films that he's done. But I'm not. I always think he's a little bit of an overrated actor. He's a good actor, don't get me wrong. I just think he's slightly overrated. But it is definitely one of his better performances. I also liked the whole metaphor with the comic books in it, which is kind of interesting, and it might just be because I'm a fan of the Flash, and he's reading. It's really cool. Like early on in the movie, there's a scene where his dad's waking him up to go do something, and you see on the nightstand there's a stack of comic books, and the one on the top is the Flash, and then later on in the movie he uses the alias Barry Allen. Which is the alias of the Flash, which I think was kind of cool. And it's really kind of cool metaphor, too, because of the fact that the Flash's superpower is that he can run fast. And, he's running away from the Tom Hanks character of Carl Hanratty, which is a composite character. But, we'll get into that a little bit more later. It was just, and I do like the relationship between those two characters, though, between Carl and him, and it's kind of like a surrogate dad in a way with them too. And it's the whole slightly overused father motif that Spielberg tends to do, because every one of his movies he tends to have some kind of like absentee father or a guy craving his father. It's because he had his own issues with his own father when he was growing up. So. I mean, if they stuck to the reality, though, Frank Sr. probably wouldn't have even been in the movie, because the reality, once he left, he never saw his dad again. So, we'll get into that a little bit more. So, why don't you hit me here with some of the fake things from the film here, Matt, like because you did some research to find out what was true and false in the movie, and hit me with a couple of the things that were fake in the movie.
Sure. Well, this one was kind of tough because a claim was made both in the autobiography itself and the movie based off of it with the same title. And that was Frank claimed that when he was on an airplane back home from, I think, France, I believe, a French prison, he was being extradited to the United States. And he claimed that he had went to the bathroom in the plane and that he took apart the toilet and basically crawled out of the airplane.
Yeah.
Since in the movie, it's also in the audio, so it's not a case of the movie playing something up that the book didn't say. The book says the exact same thing. But I looked it up, and anyone who's involved in making planes or works on planes say that it's impossible. There's so much weight behind that. Even if he was able to actually take it apart with that amount of weight, you'd have to be super skinny to even crawl. I mean, no human being would even be able to slink through there. So that, even though he claims that happened, that didn't really happen.
He did escape though from that plane somehow.
Oh, he did? Oh,
yeah, I mean, that's actually been noted from what I've read. I don't know. Maybe that's just made up too, but I did read that he did escape from that situation because he went on to do some interesting things. Getting out of places and stuff. So.
Yeah, he was really good at that, of just sneaking out. I kind of want to talk about something else in a little bit from the movie that I really liked as well. That's about him getting away in a very tight spot. But yeah, the second thing that isn't real is well, they didn't really say it in the movie, but they kind of implied that he was an only child. But he had 3 other siblings in real life, and he was the third, a fourth. So obviously, he had younger.
At least one younger sibling.
At least one younger sibling. Not at all in the movie whatsoever. No one talks about anyone else.
So who knows what happened to his siblings,
And so they kind of played that up to make it seem like he, had like this sort of like existential crisis when he found out that his parents were getting divorced, because he came home from school or work and he saw a car in the parking lot or whatever, and then the guy basically told him that he's like, a divorce lawyer, and he has to choose, right then and there to, pick who he's going to live with, and he just, runs away from home because he can't really make a decision between either of his parents because he doesn't want to offend, either one. That didn't really happen. I mean, they separated when he was 12 years old. In real life, they got divorced when he was 14. And then he chose to live with his dad, be his guardian, and he did that for about 2 years. Then he left home when he was 16. So the way the movie makes it sound like he had like this panic attack and just ran away from home, and that's when he started this whole crime thing.
Frank himself tells a story that's kind of different too than either one of those stories.
Oh, really?
Which is interesting too, because I listened to a long interview with Frank, or a long speech or something he gave at some college, and he was talking about how his parents separated. He got a note in school when he was that they were separating, and that he went to the divorce court, and that he took off after that, after he found out they were separating, and just left. He doesn't say anything about, and he says that was the last time he ever saw his dad, and he saw his mom once or twice after that or something. But there's a little bit of like discrepancies. Like, it's hard to know what's the truth on this, which is kind of interesting because there's several different stories on this one thing. But I've read elsewhere or heard elsewhere too, is that he did live with his dad for a little bit after the separation. So it's I don't know.
It's really, I mean, you're dealing with a person that's a con artist. So even after the fact, he could still tell lies.
And it could be that he's just told himself a lie so much that he believes it's the truth.
Right.
Who knows? And who knows what is true? I mean, it could be that he didn't live with his dad, and then that was a made-up story later on too. Who knows what's the truth?
Right.
Which is kind of either way, it comes down to it is that he didn't just leave like that with his parents. He may have left later. It was it was a different story. But I mean, there is a lot real in this movie, and there's a lot of fake in this movie. So it's like, they're trying to, save it for dramatic, change things for dramatic license and figure out what is the best way to tell the story. With that research that you did, what did you find out that was real?
Well, like you said, it's kind of hard because he kind of goes back and forth between what he says. Like in 2013, he said that he regretted ever allowing anyone to make that film because he wanted to leave that part of his, life behind. Then earlier he said that it was mostly a work of fiction, that it was just like a movie based on his life, but it was mostly just to tell a story, and he was kind of basically the template, but most of the story wasn't really accurate. But then later on, he said about 80% of the movie's accurate, so it's like you say, it's hard to know if it really is true or not. But one of the things that's true is that he did pretty much rack up like a $2.5 million bill against the government of the United States through cashing fraudulent checks throughout the entire country and the world as well.
I love that scene in the movie when they go to visit his mom, when they finally figure out who he is and they look in the yearbook or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of this really happened, but it's just I love that scene where she pulls out her little checkbook and she's like how much does he owe? We can square this up or whatever. And then they're like, yeah, $2.1 million at the time or something like that, and then she's just got this look on her face that's great.
They walk out. She's like, I've been working at the church part time.
Yeah,
it's like yeah, okay, that'll settle the score.
Yeah,
but lots of things like that were true. He really did impersonate a doctor when the cop or the authorities in the Pan Am were starting to crack down on finding this guy who was, impersonating the Pan Am pilot. So he knew he couldn't do that for too much longer before getting caught. So then he happened to go to a hospital, I think in Georgia, and overheard someone talking about needing a doctor or something like that. And then it just kind of happened where the doctor basically, offered him a part-time job at the hospital at night to supervise.
Well, it was something he moved into an apartment.
Yeah,
I remember. He needed to put down an occupation, and he didn't want to put down the pilot thing because he knew they were looking for him, and so he put down doctor as his occupation, and then it turned out there was another. He put down pediatrician. Yeah, because he lived in a singles unit where there was he figured that there would be no other, nobody with kids there that would try to get him to look at their kids. So he figured he put down that he was a pediatrician. Right. And then one of the guys in the complex was looking for a doctor to fill in at the hospital when somebody was on vacation or leave or something because of a family member dying or something. And that's basically what I heard is, and then he filled in. It was an administrative role where he didn't really have to see patients per se, and he had all these people below him that he could make see the patients, so he could get away with not doing it. So
wow. Yeah. So all that really happened. He did live in France for a while after he was done with his criminal career. In the movie, it portrays him as though he's still making a bunch of fraudulent checks, and he's hiding out in Mont-Richard, France. But in reality, he was actually living in Montpellier. I'm not sure if that's correct pronunciation. And he was pretty much doing that to live a quote straight life, though he wasn't like continuing his operation. But in the movie, they made it look like he was like in some factory or printing press, just printing out all of these hundreds or thousands of checks basically, and that's where Carl ends up finding him. But it was in a different city because in the movie it's Mont-Richard, which is where Frank's dad was supposed to have met his mom. Yeah, which didn't happen in real life. They met each other in Algiers, which is in northern Africa. So because France had colonies in Algeria and places like that back in the 40s, and she must have been maybe like a USO type of whatever the French equivalent of the USO. I'm not sure, but something like that. Yeah. I mean, she could have been a soldier, I guess, but I doubt it. And just by her personality. Yeah. So that's where they actually met each other in real life, not at the village of Mont-Richard and stuff. And he got turned in by a former girlfriend who saw his picture on a wanted poster, and I guess maybe their breakup wasn't that good or something because she turned him into the police.
Or she was just an honest person.
It could have been that too, yeah. So then that's how he ended up getting caught. So there's little things like that are basically true, but they kind of just change it up a little bit to make it more fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in the movie that they changed for dramatic purposes and things of that nature. And this movie took like over 20 some years to be made. I mean, it was after they kept trying to make it. And one of the most odd things I read about one of the people they wanted to cast as him, and I just find it weird because of skin tone. Eddie Murphy at one point.
Wow.
I think they were just going to maybe just keep the story but change the name.
Maybe,
something. But at one point, there was negotiations early on back in the 80s or something, back when, like, probably around the time of, like, Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours and stuff like that, where he was huge, where they wanted him to possibly play the role. It was,
right.
And when I read that, I just found that kind of funny.
Well, he was in that one movie where, what was it called, Trading Places?
Yeah.
Where he was pretending to be someone else, so maybe that was kind of a reason too.
Yeah, it could be.
He already played a role sort of like that. I mean, that one was obviously different because it was about a wager of see who,
Yeah, because I mean, at one point, Johnny Depp was up for the role. There was other people, and originally at one point, Spielberg was just going to produce, and Gore Verbinski, who's known for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, speaking of Johnny Depp, was in talks to direct it, but then negotiations fell through on different things, and time went by, and then got to the point where they needed a director, and Spielberg decided that he would step in and do it. And before that happened too, the Tom Hanks role was going to be played by James Gandolfini from The Sopranos. So yeah, that's some of the interesting trivia that I looked up at one point, and I don't know. So here's a couple questions that we have here that we can ask each other here. Do you think that someone like Frank could get away with what he did in our times, where it is much easier to track a person's whereabouts?
What do you think?
Yes.
Think so?
Actually, I've listened to several interviews with Frank Abagnale, the real Frank Abagnale, and he said that today, most of the things, because of computers and things of that nature, everything that he did is easier now than it was when he did it. And he's actually gone on to, he's created, working for companies, and like most of the like security checks that are used by like Fortune 500 companies, and even the checks that you might get from your employer wherever you work. I know I do through mine, like this I can't remember what it's called, like ADT or whatever it is.
ADP, I think.
ADP, that's it. Yeah, ADT's a like security system, I think. But anyways, ADP, yeah, he designed their checks. So they can't, he designed all the security features in it. There's one like check that he has that is like considered to be the most, like hardest to counterfeit, and it's got like 127 different security features in it or something like that. I think he said, or something. I'm maybe way off on the number, but it's got, at least dozens of different security checks in it. So, they might be able to fool him one way, but there's so many that are obvious ones, but then there's like hidden ones that he put in there so you can tell that it's a fake check if not. And there's a lot of things too, like he brought up, like in this interview that I heard where he was talking about there's ways to take off most checks that are just basic checks that are printed on a regular printer with the with like regular ink or whatever. You can use Scotch tape, like magic tape, like and you can take off the writing on it. All you got to do is put it on there and like rub it, and it'll come off. And those are like the most unsecured checks, and you could just basically take the writing off of there and then change the amount to be whatever you wanted. Wow. And a lot of checks, it's all about the printing of the checks, where it comes to the way that things are done. Like with the inkjet printers, it's just printing on top of the paper, whereas older checks, older printers and stuff would print into the paper with the checks, so it would dye the paper basically. So those are harder to. So now a lot of people are using inkjet printers, so it's actually easier. So a lot of these things, and plus, and being able to make a fake ID, do other things like that, it's easier to do this thing, but I think you might get caught faster too.
Right.
But I do think that it is easier to commit these crimes, at least for a little while, than it was during his time, because he had to, buy a Micker thing, which would change the routing numbers on checks and things of that nature. It's just, you can print that up on your Mac or your PC now, and it's just a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like I said, it's easier to do it, but like you said, it might be also easier to get caught too, just because that's usually how it works. Is law enforcement and the criminals pretty much, they kind of use technology and they build it up simultaneously to beat each other.
But it seems a lot of times too, though, like every time a security measure is created by the FBI or the IRS or whoever, the criminals are going to come up with something a week ahead, a week before that, how to beat them,
Because they all got, they got moles in each other's operations too, so they're always telling each other, okay, here's the next plan, That's really interesting, that he said that. I mean, he would know because he's like the number one expert for all this stuff. I could see that though, because like he had to buy like a special typewriter from a auction, at least in the film. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Micker machine that he had.
Yeah. So it's like not everyone's gonna know how to do that or even know where to go to do something like that. So not you kind of had to have a sort of specialty knowledge, of even what to even do to get started. But can I mention one of my other favorite parts?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it was a time where Carl Hanratty saw Frank for the very first time, and he was pretty much sure that he was the guy, but then Frank just totally did a confidence game and eventually convinced him that he was working for the Secret Service.
Yeah, that he was Barry Allen of the Secret Service.
Barry Allen, yeah. So what happens is that Carl, has his gun out and he kind of barges in the hotel room and he's just looking through all the evidence, and then like a few minutes later, Frank comes out of the bathroom drying his hands, tells him to put his hands up. He's got his gun, pointing at him. And then Frank just goes on to this thing, just like, oh, that's the new IBM Selectric, and he's like, put your hands up, and oh, you could change the print type in 5 seconds, and I said put them up, oh, just pop out the ball. So I said put your hands up. He's got over 200 checks here, a gallon of Indian ink drafting. He even has little payroll envelopes addressed to himself and Pan Am. I mean, he just goes on to this whole thing, and like the whole time
he tells him everything.
Yeah, basically telling him what he's doing, and then Carl is still telling him, put your hands up, and then finally he's like, hey, relax. You're late. And he's like, what? He's like, what, you think you're the only people on this case? And just goes on to this whole thing about how he's working for the Secret Service. And he's like, look, my guy's got him escorting him to the car right now. And it's some like neighbor, blind old guy. And his neighbor is escorting him into the vehicle because he's blind. And he's like, and he just had this way of like convincing people that he was who he said he was, like, because he would just keep talking, I think is what it was. Like, he would never break character. So
yeah, I mean, he's
even got a gun pointed at your face, and he could have been like an actual actor probably.
Yeah,
if he'd gone different route.
Maybe gone legit and become an actor. Who knows? But but like I said, I mean, there's a lot of things that are easier now because of technology, but then there are a lot of things that are harder. It's interesting too with him. He's talking about the way that he secures his on this interview that I listened to, where he secures his finances and stuff. He does not have a debit card and never uses a debit card. He buys everything on credit and pays it off to keep his credit up, because he says you can have a debit card and it's easy for once you give that to somebody like at a restaurant. Which I've actually had happen to me, where somebody at a restaurant used my debit card number and bought some stuff with it. So the waiter at this restaurant I won't name, because it's a local restaurant that's owned by a family, because I turned them in and I told them about it. So yeah, because that was the only place I had used my debit card at that point.
Wow.
And yeah, we went and bought some books online with it.
Weird.
Like hundreds of dollar books, like for school.
Oh, okay.
Like they were like anthropology books or something. That yeah.
Well,
I wasn't taking an anthropology class at that point, and I'm like, what the hell? But basically, what it is because like they some restaurants will take your debit card or your credit card and they'll go in the back and run it.
Right.
What's to prevent that guy or girl from writing down your
right.
credit card number and all the information on your card? And then they can just go online and buy something because that's what they did. They went online and bought some books with my my debit card. But basically what he says is that banks will only insure you up to a certain amount of money. So with your debit card, if somebody takes your debit card and buys something and like, say you have thousands of dollars in your bank account and they buy something for, $3,000, the bank might not give you back that money. But with, MasterCard or American Express or something, you're insured. If you have like a regular credit card.
So if they use your credit card.
Yeah, and it's proven that somebody else used it, they'll give you back the money.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a lot. The bank has to investigate everything and all this other stuff, but the credit card is basically just insured, where they don't even really investigate the thing. You just basically tell them, hey. But then again, I mean, that just kind of sounds like he's giving you a way to cheat the system too when it comes to credit cards. Like, get a credit card and just be like, yeah, I didn't buy that Porsche. No, wait.
That's the thing. That's the thing about him. I think that there's still a part of him that is still that person, even though he works for like, the Security, man now. Yeah. I think that he might throw out these little hints just because he almost wants someone to try it out. I don't know.
Maybe he just wants to catch them. It
could be that too.
But I mean, it does make sense. I mean, a lot of times, we give our debit card to anybody with no second thought. Right. You give it to the cashier at the grocery store or the or the guy at the gas station or whatever, and you don't really think about it. Right. And a lot of times, like I said, a lot of times it's at the restaurant. They always go because they don't, because you're at a table. They have to go over to the cash register to take care of the thing.
Yeah.
So they're walking away from you out of sight most of the time with your debit or credit card in their hand. So what's to prevent these people from taking down that number without you knowing? I mean, besides, the security systems within the actual restaurant. But if it's like a small mom and pop shop, there's a lot of times they're not going to have and plus if you have like a mom and pop shop where the owners aren't trustworthy either, and it might be them doing it too.
Right.
So it's kind of scary in a way. I mean, but luckily, I've only had that one instance, where that thing happened to me. I had another instance too where somebody stole my credit card online, but that's different. My debit card online, they charged a bunch of money they sent it to somebody in the Philippines or something. And, so there's the stuff still going on. I mean, all these different things, and it's just kind of scary with the way society is and people aren't trustworthy. But it might be easier in some ways, but it's harder in other ways now.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael E. Cullen II from the podcast you're listening to right now. With me, as always, is
Matthew Haas.
Yeah, and we're here to tell you about our really cool other podcast called All Too Real 2. And what do we do on that show, Matt?
We watch the greatest direct-to-video sequels of all time, and then we report on them.
And we also talk about other pop culture cool things like video games and conspiracy theories and other awesome things. So if any of that sounds fun to you and you enjoy hearing my voice and Matt's voice,
as you should.
I mean, of course. Tune in anywhere you get podcasts to All Too Real 2. Bye-bye. What do you make of Frank's ability to live that kind of life for 5 years straight, especially starting at such a young age? Lots of people's parents get divorced and are initially hurt by it, but most of those people don't begin careers as a check fraudster or impersonate airplane pilots and doctors and lawyers and whatnot. Do you think there was something about Frank's personality itself that drove him to those things, even if his parents stayed together?
Yeah, I think he would have found maybe not as grandiose cons to do, but he'd probably still. He might have been like one of those people to start like mail order schemes or whatever, like where you tell people, hey, send me some money and I'll show you how to make money. He probably would have done something like that, or just something that was to kind of trick people, or maybe just to see how much he could get away with.
I mean, I agree. I mean, and plus the first person that he scammed was his dad.
Right.
In reality, I mean, in the real world, he did this thing where he would take his dad's credit card. Is because his dad gave him a credit card for a gas station, and he found out that it was like a gas card sort of thing, and he found out he could buy things other than gas with it. So he would talk to the cashier there and be like, hey, I can, I'll buy these, you can ring me up for these tires and you can keep like some of the money. And so they would scam together, and then you would give him part of the money for the tires and the guy would keep the rest. And it would just be these weird scams, and you do it at one gas station and then to another and then to another. And this is all when he was like, 15 or something.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. He was smart even back then to know that, that he's going to have to change it up a little bit. He can't use the same location. He's going to have to go to a different gas station. He was doing this all over the city. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, too, is like what I was wondering, though, is how would they work that out inventory-wise, though? Like if someone's buying tires and it's marked as though, so what, they're just going to throw away the tires?
Well,
I mean, like...
What they would do is like, okay, like say I come in and run this scheme and buy these tires. I mean, and we just you have the money on the system or whatever. What would happen was it would usually be with like a item that would sell easily. So then a customer would come in a day or two and buy those tires, and he would pocket the money because there would be you basically have 1.5 times the amount of the tires, because if you're splitting it with Frank,
right.
If I'm the cashier, I have, like let's say the tires were $500 or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's probably way too expensive for back then. Let's say they're $100. Okay, let's say the tires are $100, and the cashier keeps 50, I take 50, and then a lady comes in the next day and buys the tires, and she gives me 100. Then I have 150 in my pocket, and so I just got to make sure I put the 100 in the till for the thing. And this is before computers and things, so it wasn't like you had to ring out the UPC right away or anything for the items. So you can still do stuff like that now, even with the computers. I mean, it's just I've known people that used to do stuff like that that got caught for different things. Like I used to work at a Blockbuster Video, and I heard about a store where somebody was giving away free rentals because we had the option to scan the free rental thing on there. And and they got fired for it after they finally got caught. But they would give people rentals at a discounted price. Like if the rental was $3.50 or something, they would say, "Hey, you can rent this for $2," and then they'd scan the free rental thing, and then they just pocket the $2. Wow. So and you never know what people are just scammers,
right? And I think I actually witnessed some guy's dad finding this out about his own son a few years ago.
Really?
Like this whole story brought up a memory because I was with Aaron. We were hanging out one night. Aaron's a friend of ours.
Okay, yeah.
Mainly mine, but he's a friend of ours. And then we were just driving around, and he went to go get some gas, and this guy and his dad were like arguing about like a credit card or something. The kid who kept basically saying, "Oh, she's lying," and all this kind of stuff. I guess maybe the way I took it was his dad had given him like a credit card to only buy certain things with or whatever, and I guess found out. So, and like he's saying, "Oh, I only got it for gas," and I had no idea what. I'm like, why would this is a weird argument to be having? I don't even understand the context of it. But when I heard this, I'm like thinking maybe it was something like that. Maybe the guy got his son a gas card, and he was pretty much either buying other shit with it or just scamming, If
you ever seen the movie Reality Bites, Winona Ryder's character does something similar in that, where she gets this gas card from her parents and realizes that that she can buy stuff in the carryout, like, snacks and whatnot. So she just buys all of that instead of buying gas with it. So, because her parents gave it to her for gas, but.
Right.
Yeah. I think that was that movie. Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. He racked up a $3,000 bill, credit card bill in 1 month during that time. For inflation, that would be $21,000 in today's money.
Wow.
In a month. And I know Frank Abagnale Sr. was a wealthy guy, but I don't know $21,000 a month wealthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with 4 kids.
I think you'd notice this.
Well, he did when he got the bill.
Yeah. But, I guess you wouldn't notice it till you got the bill, yeah.
And then it didn't seem like he even chastised him that much. Yeah. I think the real Frank Abagnale Sr. was kind of like the character Christopher Walken played a little bit. Maybe not as flamboyantly about, like, stuff like that, but I think he kind of, like, was impressed, I guess, by his son's ability to trick him. I don't know. But not, like, I don't know. Like, he may have punished him a little bit, but I don't think he was, like, that mad about it. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But I don't know. I mean, it's just an interesting character. I mean, it was a very interesting story. It brings me to my next question thing. Would you recommend watching this a second time?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen it like 15 times. So.
Yeah. I mean, I would, but in all honesty, not as highly as some of the other films that we've seen, because I like the movie, but it's not as entertaining to me as something like Shattered Glass or something that we've watched before. It's just, I've seen it probably about 5 or 6 times myself, but not all the way through it each time. I kind of just would zone out after a while.
Well, I was going to say that too. I'm glad that you actually brought that up, because I was going to say that, but I forgot about it, is that a lot of movies, not just this one, but this one too, I guess I have this weird thing where, like, I can only usually watch about half of a movie and really like it, and like the second half, I'm just kind of like bored. And this kind of happened with this a little bit, where the first half I really liked, and then like as soon as he started impersonating the doctor, that's like when I stopped.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like once Martin Sheen got into the story,
I just didn't like that part.
Yeah, but then nothing against Martin Sheen. I love him as an actor, but still.
But then when he got caught in France, then it picked up a little bit.
But, I mean, and that brings up the whole thing, too, that Brenda Strong story with the character that Amy Adams was playing. Another young actress in this movie, one of her first major roles. She, there was a Brenda Strong, but there was actually another woman that he was more in love with than her, and this was kind of a composite character between the two, and her dad wasn't a lawyer and all that other stuff, and Martin Sheen's character didn't exist, and like most of that, he did pose as a lawyer, but it happened under different circumstances. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but that's not really how it happened. And I mean, like I said, I mean, it's nothing I would rush to watch right away again. I mean, I love the movie, and I don't want to downplay it, and I think the acting was great, and I love Tom Hanks, and I think DiCaprio did a decent job in the movie. It's just something I have with a lot of Spielberg films. I like Spielberg. I respect him a lot, but a lot of his movies, especially the last half hour or so, kind of just... I mean, there's a little bit of dragging before the last half hour, and then the end of the movie, he'll usually tack on a Hollywood ending, which makes sense, but, because you want to have that Frank, because he's like kind of Frank Capra, of the 80s, and it's just, sometimes, I mean, some of his movies, don't get me wrong, are good, strong movies, but a lot of his movies have this, like, saccharine ending that you don't really necessarily need. Like, the movie's going great, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, everything's tied up in a nice little bow. And I'm like, I'd rather have it be real, like real life, where not necessarily everything's tied up. I mean, you got to tie it up for the movie, but you can't have everybody ride off into the sunset happy. Don't always have to have that. This is just my own little diatribe about Spielberg.
That's his style. Yeah, he does that a lot.
And I mean it. And I understand why, because he loves old Hollywood, and he is kind of like our last bastion of old Hollywood that's out there. It's just, I don't know, sometimes I think he goes too far. But I respect him a lot because he still does a lot of things in the old school way, which is kind of cool too. Because kind of need that guy, and I think he's a great director. And if he ever wants to work with me, I would. And
me too.
Because he's listening to our podcast
he is.
right
he
now.
Will.
Yeah, he's hearing it right now. Because he listens to everything about him.
He might.
Because he has no time at all to do.
Well, according to Kevin Smith, him and George Lucas just go on each other's websites and show up, hang out, and just load up each other's websites.
Yeah, basically, that's all they are doing. They don't ever have time to do anything. It's because all they're doing is listening to podcasts and reading blogs.
Yeah,
and and some idiot reviewing their movie.
I hope I'm not the idiot.
No. I think
maybe I am.
No. Hi, folks. This is Mike Lee Cullen II from the podcast that you're listening to right now, along with
manager Matthew Haas.
You got promoted?
Yes.
Damn it. Okay. Anyways, folks, do you like the show Superstore? I don't know. I asked the folks and nobody's answering me.
Because they're not here.
Oh,
but we love
damn it. Yeah, we love it, though. Okay, folks, if you like it as much as we do, you're really going to like the Super Story podcast, which is a podcast where Matthew and I go episode by episode and give our little opinions and thoughts on it. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't. Just depends on how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And, so if you like this podcast and like our little crazy banter,
then you should definitely check this out. Or I might get sad. And when I get sad, it gets pretty sad.
Yeah,
so
I can't deal with him when he's sad.
Yeah, no one can really. So,
yeah. So check out Super Story Podcast. Right here where you get this podcast, Super Story Podcast.
Any day, I'm ready.
When you need magical appraisal, you won't find a wizard as wizened as Wizard Quaff.
The world is expendable in the grand scale of my hatred for creatures beyond my understanding. And you, Magus Elgar.
Even if he has some peculiar preferences.
Abominations! Curb your tongue, lest you uncork my lust for opiates!
You can hear Wizard Quaff and his exciting adventures in the upcoming radio comedy, Magus Elgar.
Visit MagusElgar.com to download your copy today.
Anyways, anything else you wanted to say about the movie before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, just one scene, another one, because there's so many good moments in the movie that it just adds to the humor of it. Like when when Carl Hanratty and his team interrogate or interview Frank's mom at her house, she offers them Sara Lee desserts.
Yeah.
And every time one of the guys is trying to pick up a fork, to eat his dessert, Carl starts asking him questions. So then he retracts his hand because he doesn't want to, reach for a utensil as they're talking about the serious matter. And then he waits till Carl stops talking and he puts his hand back out and Carl starts talking. And again, eventually Carl just takes the fork but faces the sharp end towards him. It's like trying to stab him with it. I love just that. Such a funny little moment.
And I like it when he finally gets to, he's like, nobody doesn't like Sara Lee.
That guy is like such a cornball.
I like the thing when they're in the car and Carl's like, you want me to tell you a joke? And he's like, sure, we'd like to hear a joke from you, Carl. And then he's like, knock knock, who's there? Fuck you.
Yeah, it's such a great. Tom Hanks he just delivers it so perfectly. He was the perfect role for that type of character, really. Yeah. Just that, and another true thing too. Just before we wrap up, there really was sort of like a tradition where Frank would call him like every Christmas Eve, and just sort of talk to him a little bit.
Really? Because I had read elsewhere that he never did that.
Oh, well.
So this is really interesting.
One of those things where it's I guess at one moment he says that he did call him, and then maybe he was like doing drugs. No, he never really said he did drugs at that. So I don't know. Maybe he just remembers things differently.
Because my thing is, it's like Carl Hanratty was like, there's this guy John Shea that he was mostly based on. But I guess John wasn't the only person after him. There was a whole team of different people, and he was kind of a composite, and Carl was kind of a composite character of different ones. But the guy that he ended up working for later on was Shea. But it's just, I don't know. It's just they decided to composite it into the Carl character. so who knows how much of that is true and how much it isn't. But the one thing I think with that, it was just basically to try to emphasize the loneliness that Frank was having while he was out on the run.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's got to be a lonely life. I mean, I would not want to be on the run the rest of my life. I'd rather be able to, see my mom and dad and see my, sister and nieces and nephews and friends and family and stuff. It's just kind of...
I mean, yeah, you're living in hotel rooms, even if there are, high-scale hotels and, for like a week, and then you're going somewhere else. And it's
like, I mean, I've talked to friends who are like comics that go on tour, or musicians that have gone on tour, and just even that, where they can call back their wives and girlfriends and moms and dads and brothers and sisters and stuff. But but it's just the going from town to town, up and down the dial again. Oh, wait. That's the WKRP in Cincinnati theme song. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyways, but you know what I mean. They're like, it's kind of a loneliness thing. There's only so many Waffle Houses you can eat in and stuff. It's just they all look the same.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, was that about all you had here?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, good movie. I would watch it a few more times. But yeah, not as good as like Shattered Glass or Social Network.
Yeah,
but still
a good movie. It's still a great movie. I mean, I'd say it's probably one of Spielberg's better movies. I mean, it's a different movie. I mean, it's probably his perfect example of the Peter Pan complex of a guy that doesn't want to grow up, or is growing up too fast in a way. But that's another thing that Spielberg's known for, is the whole Peter Pan complex of the character not wanting to grow up. I mean, even just look at Indiana Jones too, even though that was Lucas and him. But the whole thing, I mean, I don't know, but that's about it. Is there anything you want to recommend to people or anything? We can always cut this out.
I forgot about that.
No, that's fine. We don't have to.
Yeah, I'll think of something and then we can put it in later or something.
Yeah, I mean, as far as our all too real recommendations here, that's what I'm calling this week. I'll change it every time. Anyways, I wanted to just recommend people checking out Ryan Roth and the Sideshow. They have an album out called Unbuckled, which is a great album. If you can find that on all the good places that you can find good music,
iTunes,
Spotify, different places, but I recommend buying the album. It's great, downloading it or buying a physical copy. But it's great album. It is one of the best I've heard in a long time. And anything you'd like to recommend people to check out this week?
No.
No? Okay.
Sorry, I'll think of something.
Oh, no, that's fine. Okay, so we can cut this out.
Okay.
Too. I might even cut mine out, so we don't know. But that's all we got here. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time, and don't be afraid to get all too real.
Thanks for listening to All Too Real Podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Hawes. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.